We will begin with the opening prayers.
xie bu ju ju xie me do re ra we ne xie nin de gen ba sang ge xin do me de bu wai ro ge nan da xin la jue ba ra ju sen jie nam ye san ba lo ye jie ra jie da xie zhong de mo de ba ye xue ge gong lo gong do su.
I'd first of all like to wish you my greetings. And so I thought I'd begin by speaking about the autobiographical versus the good deeds. And within that, and this is, I think, the fifth of the good deeds described there. So it's the fifth good deed. So this fifth good deed the fifth good deed is, in terms of the outline, it is the fifth of the preliminaries, or the preliminary. And so this is called giving up on. The text reads, I saw that everyone high and low must die, like a river rushing, naked and empty-handed. When I reflected, how could thoughts of the eight concerns have any chance to arise even in dreams? I think of this as one of my good deeds. Now, there's also probably the same as the fifth stanza from the praise he searched thoroughly. So I thought I should share that stanza with you also. Now, in terms of the outline, this fifth stanza of the praise he thought searched thoroughly In the annotated commentary by Shamakon Chitnak, this is said to be about transcendent generosity, loving kindness, and so forth, and transcendent diligence, non-attachment, and so forth. The text reads, his mind never free from love and pangs of compassion. His wish for emancipation was utterly pure. He always despaired of the suffering and its causes and pondered impermanence. To him I pray. And so that is the fifth good deed and the fifth stanza of the Praise He Searched Thoroughly. So I have now read these to you. So Mikyu Dorji wrote in a text he wrote called Instructions on Training in Liberation Stories. So there's this text. And what this text says is, so there's no way but to despair of them. So it's probably better to just say the main points rather than reading the whole thing. If for the sake of our body life, if we use our body, speech, and mind for the pointless activities of this lifetime, then that is a really great loss. And the reason for that is that our body life and all of our possessions do not remain for even an instant. They're impermanent, and they're always changing. And their speed is even faster than the speed of the sun and the moon. They're even faster than the speed of the sun as it rises and sets. And so we have the friends we have known for a long time, who we always spend our long time. And there's all the wealth we have risked our lives to gather. There's our own places and lands, and basically, so there's our own fully ripened body. These are all they're being used up at minute after moment. And because we're using them, they're always coming to depletion. He understood this, Mikyu Dorji understood this, and he had a great feeling of impermanence. And had a really uncomfortable feeling of that they were being destroyed by birth and death. And likewise, all of our body, our possessions, our entourage, our fame, they are the results, they happen because of the results of our past karma, past actions. And they're not something that we should use our time or power or capacity in this life. If whatever little time we have in this time, whatever capacity we have in this lifetime, we need to spend it for the sake, use it for the sake of the next lifetimes, in order to not suffer in future lives and to be happy in future lives. That is what we should work towards. But we need to stop doing any other sort of action, any other actions. And so this is as said in this in these instructions on training in the liberation stories. This is also said. We also said this the other day in talking about the fourth good deed about abandoning meaningless deeds. If we use our body, speech, and mind for the sake of meaningless or ridiculous or pointless actions for the sake of this life, there's no greater loss and no greater depression than that. And so if we think about this, what does it mean to say that the actions we do for the sake of this life are pointless? What makes it pointless? Now, we can talk about this in many different ways. For example, when we read the texts written by the great masters of the past, what it says in those texts all the actions we do whose aim is for this life are pointless and ridiculous. And the reason why they're saying this is we need to, if we think about the reason why they say this, is the person who says that the actions of this that we do for this life's sake are pointless, meaningless, and ridiculous are people who believe that there are future lives. And in comparison to future lives, this life is a really short time. It's like no longer than a yawn. So cats always young all the time, right? And so it's no longer than the duration of a cat's young, since it's no longer than that. So they understand this. And if we lose this opportunity to bring the benefit to bring benefit for their lives, then it's a great loss. But we don't think like this. When we say that all the actions of this life are meaningless, we think that the person who's saying this are the great are great lamas of the past. Now, but when we heard the talk of someone saying that the life of this life sake are meaningless, we think this is just the sake of talk of some freeloader who doesn't know how to do such work. Like someone who doesn't know how to do anything is just saying fatuous things. And that's the way it seems to us. And this is completely understandable that we can't get our minds around this, because we have never thought that the actions that we do for this life are pointless. To give an example, I'm going to say, oh, so doing that's pointless. That's really boring. We say with that, right? But what is pointless? What is boring? We need to do some study. We need to train our minds in order to understand what it means. Otherwise, we can't really know. For example, to give an example, if there's someone is supposed to come, like an Indian, it's like an Indian worker is supposed to come, like an electrician is supposed to come. And so they come. And so you're waiting for them. You're waiting for them. They're supposed to come at 9 o'clock, but they don't get, it's 9:30, they don't get there. We get a little bit bored. And if we keep waiting, you wait until 10 o'clock, and you still hear nothing about them. There's no sign of them. Not only are you bored, you also get annoyed. And if you have to wait, even longer, that you just see that it's completely pointless and you won't wait. And so that's the easiest way of saying that something is pointless. That's the easiest way that many people can understand something's pointless. Another way of thinking about it is, like, imagine that this afternoon you have to go on a train, go by rail to Bodh Gaya. And you get to the train station. You wait 4 hours. And the train doesn't come. In the end, they make an announcement over the loudspeakers. The train will not be able to depart until 3 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. When they make that announcement, you'll just get completely bored and completely... And you're going to feel like it's really difficult and really tiring. So that's another way to get bored. And so I think everyone can understand easily how that's boring. There are also some things that pointless things and boring things that we can think. But other ways are not so easy for us to understand. For example, like when we're doing a puja, like the monks and nuns, instead of reciting the text, they sit there having a conversation, like doodling, making little drawings. And then the discipline master comes by. The disciplinarian comes and says, "What are you doing?" And so you have to puja, and then they slap you. then immediately you're going to stop. But in your mind, you won't immediately think that it was pointless. They say that, but in our minds, you'd think that that's not that. Why can't we why can't we play games, or why can't we enjoy ourselves, or like when we're supposed to be studying, we're always sitting there looking at our phone, and then the teammate comes and says, "Why are you doing something so pointless? Why are you wasting time?" And then they take your phone away from you. Then you're going to get a bit angry, right? Why are they saying this is so pointless? What's pointless? It's enjoyable, isn't it? I think it's really great, really interesting. You don't think that it's pointless or it's boring. So if we compare that to how it is for the previous, if the lamas of the past were to look at what we do, they'd look at everything we do and just say it's pointless and ridiculous. And the reason that it's pointless is that for generally regular people, if there's someone who just spent the whole day lazing about, lying down and sleeping, we'd say that he's like doing something pointless. Or if someone else, does things without any aims or any plans, we'd say that that's just pointless and ridiculous. Or if you have a little child, just to let them play all day long. When we adults look at him, we'd think he's doing something pointless. We'd think that, right? And if we say, don't play, and then that little kid is going to say, they can't understand. They're going to think, why can't I play? It's fun, isn't it? So for that reason, we don't see some pointless things as being pointless, and there's some pointless things that are not pointless that we see as being pointless. When we say that what the gurus of the past say is pointless are things that we do not see as being pointless. So we're using the same words as saying there's no point, there's meaningless, it's boring. It's the same thing, but it's understood in different ways. And so for that reason, there's a story about this. And the story goes, in the old days, there was the great Kadampa scholar, Geshe Potowa. He was really famous, right? So Geshe Potowa, and then another Geshe whose name was Chukyi Wezar. And they were both really famous Kadampa gurus and Kadampa Geshes. And so they had many students who were in common. There were a lot of students who were both of their students. So one day, these students said to Geshe Chukyi Wezar, and what they said was, when Potowa teaches Dharma, we have this really different feeling in our mind. It has like a different type of belief or confidence. But when you teach Dharma, we don't develop as much certainty as we do when Potowa teaches. Why is that? They asked the Geshe. What is that? When he asked, then Geshe Chukyi Wezar didn't immediately answer. They'd say, when I'm teaching Dharma, they don't get a feeling. It's like, what are you supposed to say? And so they probably looked at them with a kind of a dark look on his face and probably looked at them, right? But what he's thinking is, Geshe Chukyi, what he's thinking to himself at that time, what he was thinking is, so that can't be, because I know the Dharma well. I know it better than Potowa does. But it's possible that Potowa has some pith instruction that I don't have. And so maybe I better go. And so one day he went to listen to Potowa. So he thought, I better go listen to see what he's teaching that I'm not. And when he went to the teaching, and when he listened to Potowa give a teaching from beginning to the end, he also had a different feeling. He had a different type of belief. Oh, when that happened, it's like, what's this? I even get the feeling of it. And so how is that I'm getting this feeling? And so then he asked Poto about this. And when he asked Poto, I said, so what he said to Poto was, so when I listen to you teach the Dharma, you don't say anything that I don't already know. But I understand something that I hadn't understood before. So what's the reason for that? So this is what he asked. And when he asked that, then Potoa said to him, oh, what you're saying is true. How could I possibly teach anything that you don't already know? Because you know the better than I do. But when you say that there's something that you don't understand, but I do, it's because the one thing is that when I teach the Dharma, I point the arrow inside. That is probably why. So what Poto is saying is when Poto was teaching the Dharma, he was teaching thinking, is this going to help the mind? His aim was to help the mind. For example, if we're given an arrow, so we, instead of shooting the arrow outside, if we are saying, I point it outside, his aim is, instead he's pointing it inside. And so he's teaching with, he speaks with the intention of bringing benefit to the students' minds. And so I think that's the reason why he's saying that is probably the reason why they have a different understanding. So that's what it's like that. So it's as I said before. And he says, there's no point, it's boring, there's no understanding. These all the words are the same, but they can understand them differently. We think that there's no point. And the great gurus, and what the gurus think are pointless, these are different. What the gurus of the past, if they think about it, everything we do, for them, everything we do is pointless. And the reason for that is all of the work that all the things we do in this lifetime, is we do them with the aim of this lifetime. And for that reason, everything we do is pointless from their perspective. But for us, if we think about it from our perspective, when we say that everything we do for this lifetime are pointless or meaningless, then we don't believe it. There are pointless things, but we can't say that everything is pointless. And so for that reason, there's a difference there. So generally, many people, so in order to accomplish their desires for this life, such as food and clothing, fame, and so forth, many people do all sorts of different things, and they think, what would it better if they think, should I do business? Should I steal or rob? Should I do something, be violent, or should I be peaceful? Is it better to do business? Better to lend money? Better to earn interest? If you're bold, it'd be better to be like steal things or rob people. Or if you don't have any confidence, then think it'd be better to beg. They think, what can I do? And so when they see something that's just a little bit, who has a little bit more wealth, a little bit a higher position, or a little bit better position, they get a little bit jealous and see what they can do to get at them. And when there are people, their peers who are equal to them, if they have an iPhone, they think, why don't I have an iPhone? Then you think, I need to go and buy an iPhone too. And if someone else has like have a really nice motorcycle, and think I need to get one that's even louder and even more impressive than that. And someone else buys a truck, then I'm going to see if I can buy a car that's like a BMW or something. And so we have that competitiveness. And when there are people who are weaker than us, we scorn them and criticize them. We look down upon them. And so brief, people work themselves to the point of death for the sake of this life, only doing things for the sake of this life, and this brief life runs out. And lies for when their own group has happiness, or when our own group has happiness, pleasure, and eternity, and we feel happy. And when our adversaries have pain or unhappiness or loss, where we think, oh, that's great, oh, it's the Dharma protectors. When things go well for them, what happened to my Dharma protectors? Where did they go? And so then we recite Mahakala Puja as much as we can. We do the torment act. We do the various rituals to repress things and so forth. And so that's how we act. And then when there are people who we don't have any connection of as being friend or foe, whether suffer, whether die, whether they're happy, or whether things good happen to them, we think, they're not related to me. I don't have a connection to them. We don't even have any misgivings that possibly we should do something to benefit them. And so basically, that's the way all of us people act. But for Mikyo Dorje, his character was like, his nature was different than ordinary people's. Ordinary people really work hard for the sake of this lifetime. They work hard to bring profit and victory to their own side and loss upon their enemies. But he had absolutely no interest or enthusiasm about that. And he'd say to others people that acting like this is pointless and meaningless. So saying that there is no essence. And so when he was telling people that it was meaningless or pointless to act like this, it wasn't that he was just using everything from his throat on up to say it. He was saying it from the very depths of his heart. And when he would speak like that, then other people who had connections to Mikyo Dorje, other people, when he saw that they had, when he'd see that they experienced loss or suffering or problems or difficulties, then whether he saw it himself or whether he heard about it, then he had this great feeling for it as if it had happened to himself, and he felt great, really worried about it greatly. And when he's heard that people, that things are going well for people, that they're happy, that there's no harm, that they're safe, and you hear about this, he'd be really delighted about this. And likewise, when you'd hear talk about how in a monastery there are gurus or masters who are not getting along, who got into a conflict and so forth, you'd feel so worried about that, as if you'd had a huge loss in business or lost some big lawsuit. And he'd worry about it as much as that. And if I heard that there's no conflict in that monastery, and they give teachings very well, and their dharma of listening and practice is really increasing, he'd be just delighted to hear about this. This is wonderful. I'd rejoice in that. And he'd also tell a lot of people, other people about it. So in brief, Mikyo Dorje was someone who had really liked people who had good intentions, who practiced. But instead, the people but he didn't like people who were said to be good at doing things to make themselves great in this lifetime, to have good things happen, to try to make good things happen to them in this lifetime. And so and sometimes there are people who would say, who'd go and say, oh, today is the day off. We can go off and enjoy ourselves. We can go sing songs and dance or do archery or archery or throw rocks. So these days we'd say, go play football, play soccer. Of course, they didn't do that at that time. But he didn't like it when people played any games, or like playing football or anything. So what he liked, so if he had any time, if someone has any time, they recite, if they recite the supplications or songs of the great Gurus, or if they're reading the lives of the great beings of the past. That's what he really enjoyed. And sometimes somebody said, so these days we sometimes read stories or watch movies about great masters. And so Mikyo Dorje, instead of that, would read songs and supplications and life stories. So that was Mikyo Dorje's nature. All the attendants around him, or all the farmers and the people around who were able to have like a longer term perspective, who said that they could think longer, what they said to Mikyo Dorje was, all of the great, all the Karmapas of the past became the gurus of the Chinese emperors. And now these days, wherever you go in India, Zhang, or Tibet, there's no one who is like a better respected Lama than us. And so we should try to gather together all the time, all of the people in all the areas of Tibet together, and see if we can build monasteries where there are none, build strongholds where there are none, and then gather lots of people and make things go. And if we don't do this now, then in the future, nothing will ever go well. And so there are many people who said this and expressed this wish to Mikhail Dorje. And then there are also a lot of people who just complain to him, oh, God, come on, just do a little bit, do something. Otherwise, you just need a little bit, So a lot of people came to complain like that. And also what some people thought is that, and so they say, oh, you've given up the world is what they say, but since the world does, we don't have a little bit of worldly power, then other people aren't going to look up to us or respect us. When you pretend to be some dharma and take no interest at all in worldly activities, then no one else is going to respect us. They're not going to look up to us. And so if you don't do a little bit of both worldly and dharmic activities, then what's going to point at the point of that? And so they really said this to him really insistently. And when he'd say this, Mikhail Dorje would say, oh, no, alas, alack. How could there be a worse way of thinking than that? How is it that we became a great Lama for everyone? It was like to become the peak by trying to make a lot of noise and pretending we have something. Is that how we became great lamas? It's because of having bodhicitta, and then because the expansion, the natural development of the activity, that we became the worthy of respect of the emperors of China. It's not because we tried to do some great lama. Now, even if once we become a Guru Lama, same thing to the. Now, if at that point, then once we become the gurus for the Chinese emperors, and at that point, if we acted like beggars, and people say we're just trying to pretend to have doing something worldly, and so for that time, he said that he just he just let the glory and the power and of the encampment just grow naturally. He didn't particularly try to do that. But at these times, the people of Tibet at that time, said they have little merit. They're very envious, and they always get into involved competition. So we need to see if we can just try to do whatever we can to decrease our position. Try to see what to do to decrease our own fame. Instead, if he didn't build monasteries, he didn't try to do things. And if we go to some isolated place where there's no one, then it's going to be more benefit to anyone else. And so, the Karma Gachen, the great encampment of the encampment, did not stay at just a single place. What it did is it would go to different places and just set up camp there. And because when you go to a place and because they still go to different places, they have to always move for one place, and they have to move to other places. And the reason why I was moving to other places is because then you get really influential in those areas. And then other people in that areas become very influential. People look up to you, and then everyone in that person. And if they get too faithful and have too much of an influence on them, or the other people, and what happens is that then it's not good, because then you start getting biased. And so that's why the encampment would travel from place to place. And so if you go to many different places, then you bring more benefit to the teachings and bring more benefit to sentient beings. And even if I'm not able to, even if I can't practice Dharma, I am not going to try to deceive people and fool them in order to gain worldly fame and goods. So I'm not going to pretend to be what I'm not, he said. So Mikado Dorjiden, his actual intention was that it's to give up all the monks in the encampment, leave them all behind, and go to some isolated place and say, and go to some isolated place all on his own. He even said he was going to do this several times, but when he was about to go off, he did this several times, but everyone said, you can't do this, it'll be harm to everything. If Milarepa had gone off like Milarepa and gone off someplace like Milarepa and stayed where there's an isolated place where there's no one, he had absolutely no desire. That's what he really wanted to do. He had no desire to stay in the encampment in the encampment. So also in Kompo, there is a monastery called the Tselhagang Monastery. There is something important place called the Karmapa's Black Treasury. And this is something I'll speak about in a few days. But what to say later is that from the time of Karmapa Dusun Khenpa, all of the articles the Karmapas from Dusun Khenpa used on, and all of the offerings from the Mongol emperors and other emperors were all stored here. And so when he'd go to Mikyo Dorje, they'd open the Black Treasury in Kompo. And so there are all these statues of represented the body, speech, and robes and articles. And when Mikyo Dorje would see this, and when he saw them, what Mikyo Dorje would say is, so if all we need is wealth and possessions, then we've got wealth and possessions. It's like those really beautiful robes, like silk robes, and like really thick, beautiful robes, such as no one had ever sees in our days. And what Mikyo Dorje said about those is, this is when there are the great powerful kings, because they're the things that came because of the when there's the connection that happened because of the power with the power of when we establish connections with powerful people like as the Chinese and Mongolian emperors, and it was sort of like naturally like the connection between Drogom Chugya Pakpa and the Mongolian emperors, and then these things naturally came. But Tibet is a place where there's not a natural country, and so people do everything. It's like everyone is possessed by ghosts, and they're only doing unvirtuous actions, unmeritorious actions, and so for these people that these days we don't need to we don't really need to wear finished robes. And he didn't allow them to use any of the articles that they'd used to be impressive and put on big impressive displays in the time of the previous Kabbalahs, previous Karma. And he didn't use anything like but one namdara, outer monastic robe of Mongolian Sikh, and one staff made of cane. But he didn't use anything else out of the Black Treasury. So that was one thing. And also when Mikyo Dorje went to Kompo, what happened when he went to Kompo? So Kompo was the region of Kompo was probably all basically an area where people had at the time of it was basically a place where it's dominated by the Karma Kagyu. And at that time, to the time of the seventh Karma, but Chögyatso, he instated what they called the strict Dharmic discipline, strict Dharma rules. And so when Mikyo Dorje came, then everyone said he should do as the predecessor had done and make this strict Dharma discipline. So Mikyo said that the previous Karmapa had such great understanding of Dharma and politics, and he had, and his the attendants also understood the both Dharmic and political traditions. But these days, that was a good time. But these days, we don't have people like that. I don't have anyone who can help me do such courageous, and everyone has changed. It's a bad area, and in such a time like this, and if we do something like that, then even if the few students we have who want to practice Dharma, it'll waste them as well. So I'm not able to do that, and so we just leave them. So then he went to the area of Horun. So this is the area of Ngachuk, present day of Ngachuk. And so the leader of Ngachuk was called Horun Tarbabum. So there's actually everyone in that area was Mongolian. He invited Mikit Dorje, and he said to the region of Damshung, which is a huge area. And so in that huge area, he said you should make a big new monastery. And then everyone in all the areas from the Mongolians, all the northern nomads could be gathered and they could all be made monks. And then because of their nature, the Mongolians will naturally support all these monks. And to be able to have like 10,000 monks. And then in the future, okay, that won't work out. And he didn't accept. And as I said the other day, the king of Chang also wanted him to stay in the area of Zhang, and that he would support him and give him offerings, and that they could do both political and Dharma activity. But Mikit Dorje did not even did not accept. And Mikit Dorje said at that time, if I wanted to make just a shashada to study the sutras only, I could go to the region of Nabgan and get 5,000 pure monks, and I could make them all into the Karmapa monks. I could do that, but I think there's no point to it, and I didn't do it. And so he didn't like it when everything was like really excellent and wonderful and like that. In particular, during the time of the seventh Karmapa, Chodai Gyatso, the seventh Karmapa was a really grand place, really beautiful and grand place. And so when Palasula Trengwa at the age of 29 came to see the said that there was really Mikit Dorje went to see it. And so at that time there were 30 different ladrangs, and each of them had wings. And so then later, when Mikit Dorje went to the central Tibet, there were only 3 left. There was the steward, the Changzi. One was the kitchen, and one was the lama who took care, named Chuje Nangso. Everything else had been packed up and reduced. There was a great encampment, but the main encampment, and then for the subsidiary camps, it was a smaller the subsidiary camp in the period of time had 10 different ladrangs. And so in the very end, so Mikit Dorje said that they should pack those all and put them up, and everything else had been packed away. And Gyaltsen Rinpoche ended with only 5 or 6 students. And so if Mikit Dorje, there are a lot of people who invited Mikit Dorje to come to all the regions of Amdo and Kham, but he didn't accept to go. And the reason for that is that it's better to go to central Tibet. For one thing is that the people in Utsang don't have as much faith. They don't have as much to offer. And at the very least, when you get to central Tibet, there's no wood and there's no salt. You can't even have salt to put in your things, and so there are no trees. And so it's better to go to central Tibet because there's less less contaminated food, less food contaminated misdeeds. And so it's better to go to central Tibet. There are a lot of powerful and wealthy people from Kham who support him, and people would think it'd be better to stay there. But the Karmapa himself, and in the Karmapa's own region, his own little kingdom, And so this is a place where the Karmapa could stay. He could stay there, but he didn't. He went essential to men. He said, this is good. People don't have a lot of faith. They don't have a lot of resources. So it's good, he said. And so that's where he stayed. Yeah, when he stayed there, is this some people, some of the attendants couldn't put up with that. They say we aren't even getting good food. So when they said to Mikitota, they wouldn't stay. And they went off to the region of Kam. And Mikitota said, it's okay. And he'd give them as many things as they want and send them off. So Mikitota himself, while he was alive, there were a lot of people who made offerings, but he didn't really keep them. He didn't hoard anything, and he just gave it over to them. And so for that reason, he didn't have much to. There wasn't too much to eat or drink in the encampment. And so people were always complaining. There are no people, and so there are some people that we don't know how to accumulate things. So we aren't getting any. We aren't getting enough to eat. We aren't getting enough to drink, and so they would protest about this. And Mikyo Dorje himself, what he said was, so for example, when you say that I haven't tried hard for the enjoyments of life and gathered anything and I'm not accomplished anything, that's true. But if I'm not expected, it's not true. And because it's the possessions and wealth of this lifetime, it's because of our past karma. If you don't have that karma to have wealth and enjoyments in this lifetime, then no matter how much you do, you won't gather anything. If you want to, and if you focus on on the next lifetime and do virtue, then you'll have plenty in this lifetime as well. And so he said, he would not use his body, speech, and mind for the sake of this life at all. And so it is all pointless. And so for that reason, that's Mikyo Dorje's his character. If we look at it from one perspective, you could probably say that Mikyo Dorje just didn't know how to do things. During the time of Karmapa Chuddhajasa, the great encampment was really impressive. And was really extremely influential at the time of, it was really influential dharmically and politically. For the time of Mikyo Dorje, it was all lost, it all scattered. He didn't pay any attention to Dharma and to the political things, so to the medicine, he just let it all go. It would be okay to say this, but if you think about it in terms of the Dharma, the way he was thinking about it is actually the way it's described in the Dharma. So if you think about it in terms of the Dharma, you think, I think it's okay. So Mikyo Dorje himself said, I'm going to do as taught in the Dharmas, and if it's good or it's bad, no matter what, I'm going to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. And so it's clear that that's the kind of person that he was. So next we will have a bit of a break and then come back and get together and teach the sixth good deed. And so I'm going to teach as much as I can about these fifth and sixth good deeds.